Hey there, welcome to episode 165 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, as usual, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 9:26 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on Friday, April 24, 2026. We normally publish new episodes of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program on Friday mornings, so it looks like we're on schedule. It's always nice, a rarity. Not that rare, but today's title and topic, network project. That sounds fairly generic, but hang on. If this is your first time listening to the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, and maybe you're not even familiar with what Cafe Genius is, let me give you the quick rundown. I usually have been giving like the full story, but I don't know if, you can listen to the older version of this audio program a couple of episodes back. But I will provide some information on the Cafe Genius homepage so that I don't need to read this out every time. I know you're busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. Cafe Genius was formed in January of 2022 to get the pitch workout room up and running. It is a combination of two different things. Cafe with two F's but no accent is an homage to the Cafe Centro coffee shop in San Francisco, where startups start was their tagline. Unfortunately, Cafe Genius did not survive very long after the pandemic, which is unfortunate. I had been there many times. Cool place. It did indeed attract entrepreneurs pursuing their startup adventures. It was in San Francisco in the South Park, a literal park with park benches and trees and grass, very near what is today the Oracle Ballpark. As well, the Genius, as in Genius Lunch, which was a gathering, an ad hoc gathering now and then of various people in and adjacent to the downtown project here in Greater Vegas, probably about 10 years ago. It was an effective way to share information, introduce new ideas, new startup ideas, people who had just moved into the area to pursue their startup adventures, who's doing what, what's up, what's down, gossip, etc., etc. It was quick. You go for lunch, or maybe you can't make it, not a big deal. Then you get back to whatever it was you were working on. So very effective for connecting people in a useful and diverse way. Like it wasn't a programming meetup or a real estate networking or searching for clients. None of that. It was just simple. Oh, what are you up to today? You want to jump in on the Genius Lunch? So Cafe Genius and the Impresarios audio program, which you're listening to right now. Impresarios are the people making it happen. So our content, our production concerns either impresarios themselves. We have had interviews. It's been a while. We'll have to get back into that a little bit, maybe soon. Or about the challenges and the hurdles and maybe the successes of the people doing it. So if you're not here yourself, what we talk about concerns you perhaps. And I am myself an entrepreneurial innovator. So I count, I think. So I sometimes behave as a proxy for my peers in this the sea of entrepreneurial innovation, the entrepreneurial innovative ecosystem, and all that affects it and goes on inside and outside of it. That sounds like a big deal. Episode 165 is about a network project, just network project is the title, that I am working on. So hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you. It's one sentence. And then the links for today's episode, there are the usual two about the program homepage, and your host, that's me, has a Buy Me a Coffee page. And then there are three links related to what we'll talk about today. So 3 episode links. We'll run through those very quickly. So here we go. Let's get started on this lovely Friday morning here in Vegas. One of the topic areas we really should talk about is entrepreneurial innovative pursuits, like startup ideas and projects. So let us do just that today. So as I said, we have had guests on. We really need to start talking to more people about what they're pursuing, what their ideas are and whatnot, how it's working out. So it's some talk about the idea and what they're up to and how far along and so on, but also what sort of challenges, what has worked, what isn't working in our ecosystem here, which things can we try to affect change in. And by the way, that's part of the goal of Initiative 2026 and the Genius Roundtable second cohort, which will kick off at some point during the year. So all this stuff is related to the general health and well-being of our ecosystem in which we pursue our adventures here. I've already done an episode on community versus ecosystems and whether you can build these things. So I'll let that go for today. I have my opinions. The links for today's episode: Cafe Genius homepage, cafe, CAFFEGENIUS.org. The Cafe Centro had an accent over the E, so we're not so fancy. It's easier to type without the accent. Cafe with 2 F's, genius.org. The host profile page linking everything, that's me. If there were a guest, then it's basically the guest link, like where to find them, where to find more information about their startup or what they're up to or how they impact or participate in all of this. So mine is the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page. I've maintained that for 5 years. You don't have to spend any money. I don't use any of my efforts that I talk about anyway to try to make money. So no podcast advertising and whatnot. Not yet anyway, but I don't see that changing. You are welcome to buy me a coffee at that website. Proceeds do go towards the purchase of more coffee and coffee accessories. I maintain this. It has been just over 5 years now because it's been just over 5 years, but it's also a landing page that I don't have to maintain so much. I don't have to manage a domain or a server or things like this. I have other things to manage. Just look at cafegenius.org and say, oh yeah, okay, he doesn't really have time to make websites look nice. I kill myself with laughter. The buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page contains links to my various audio programs that I produce, including their YouTube links and their Spotify for Creators links and homepages and all this. Links to projects I'm working on and affiliate links also if you'd like to support these efforts. It doesn't add any extra cost to you if you purchase these things that I actually use, including some coffee beans and so on. So check that out if you like. Share it with a friend, why not? And do recall the Buy Me an Update audio program published on Monday mornings is a 5-minute or less quick rundown on the topics from the previous week of audio programs, and then a news and announcements. It's named after Buy Me a Coffee. It used to be published there exclusively, but now it's also published in the usual places 2 hours later. So you can get a jump on it there. It is named because of that. So now that it's available everywhere, it's not necessarily clear why it's called Buy Me an Update, but there you go. So the 3 episode links for today, the very early days. It's a Wayback Machine link on archive.org, and it happens to be a link to my very first website. And this is the first presence, the first, what do they call it? A snapshot that's available in the Wayback Machine of my personal domain, my vanity domain. It was the first domain I purchased, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. What could have been a 2-Bit History blog post from January of 2020 on FOF, friend of a friend, a way to create and share network information between people, friend of a friend, without the need for a Facebook or a LinkedIn or anything. That's a little foreshadowing. ActivityPub, activitypub.rocks. ActivityPub is a protocol for publishing updates and followers and other information. So it's a way to, in a decentralized fashion, share information between servers who implement which implement the ActivityPub protocol and the minor infrastructure required. And it passes Activity Stream messages, Activity Stream 2.0, or later perhaps, with extensions. And it passes these messages around for the purposes of a structured platform independent. So there's no proprietary messaging. It's an open standard and open protocol to share updates, notes, followers, the actor information, the users, all sorts of stuff gets passed around. So now you're not beholden to a particular platform to make these connections and then pass information between them. If you've used Mastodon before, for example, I use it basically replacing Blue Sky and Twitter, of course. So Mastodon, you can have multiple Mastodon accounts. You can start your own server. I mean, you can have multiple Twitter accounts. I have multiple accounts on multiple servers. So I have the same username, but across 4 different servers. So I focus on technology on one and general news of the day and maybe more humorous things. And so I have different people following me, different interactions, different type of information, different places that I would go to look for. Like I have an account on the Fosstodon, free and open source software, I think it is. So Fosstodon is where I would go and follow people that are in the general open source, technology, hardware, software. Doesn't have to be just those, but just more technology oriented. So the ActivityPub protocol connects these servers and thousands of other ones, whether they are Mastodon or other platforms. PixelFed, PeerTube, Lenny, which is like Reddit. So a lot of platforms out there are sort of mixed. PixelFed is like Instagram. So you have various platforms in development or deployed that give a similar experience as existing commercial platforms, but they interoperate using ActivityPub. If you're a Blue Sky person, you've heard of AT-Proto. That's developed by the Twitter founder, Jack Dorsey and friends. The CEO of Blue Sky, I think, is stepping down, moving on to other things. So AT-Proto has its challenges. It's not quite as decentralized, arguably, as ActivityPub. But that's a different topic for a different day. So ActivityPub, though, is very interesting. Completely open. It's a Web3 standard now. It's published a while ago. We'll talk about that too. But we're talking about a network project. The network project that I am pursuing right now, in addition to 25 other things. Okay, then let's get started. First of all, have you heard about Really Cool? It's a couple of things. I've talked about it before. So here's a little refresh. So I've not mentioned this in a while, but I have my own solopreneur. It's not really a word anyway, right? Pursuits here in the Greater Vegas area under my LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, Really Cool Technologies, which is why I am particularly interested in entrepreneurship, innovation in Greater Vegas. I'm here. I'm actually doing it. I'm a part of whatever this is. Brief backstory, my very first personal domain purchased from one of the very earliest of registrars. I guess you really lease them because you have to renew every year, basically. But I was from Network Solutions, which was the commercialized spinoff, I guess, of the Internick. So I had a nick handle and everything, DH1426. Those don't mean anything anymore, but that was me. Purchased it in 1996. It was $75 and reallycool.com because one slow day in the Newton Group at Apple, when I was working there back then, my colleague and I, killing some time, decided that we needed to buy domains or lease them, as depending on how you view that, to make it easier to switch email providers. So I had just graduated from college 3 years earlier. I went from Hugo at hmc.edu for my school, then to netcom.com, then to best.com. Honestly, I don't even know if those are in business still. I haven't even looked. And then I found that changing email addresses and trying to let people know, I just moved to a different server, here's my new email address. It's kind of a pain. It's number portability on cell phones, equally good to solve that problem. I got a new phone number. Now I got to tell everybody, et cetera, et cetera. So this was to address that pain. Hugo at reallycool.com. That'll be my address forever. And so it has been. Aside from the fact that I've had the same email address since March of 1996, and I've had it many since, I have a lot of domains and so on. This is my preferred domain for my own business pursuits. Really Cool Consulting, Really Cool Media, Really Cool Technologies, and so on. This is not merely a vanity domain. I have formed LLCs over the years in Arizona, California, and now Nevada, which Really Cool Technologies LLC calls home. This is to say, Really Cool Technologies is a real company, even though it's one person, but that's a good start. As the internet, and also for consulting, so my own projects or consulting for others, it's a channel for payment, etc. By the way, I don't sell anything, so still, hopefully somebody understands that now. I don't have to keep filing $0 sales tax documents. As the internets were becoming more of a thing, and later after working at Apple in 1996, for the second time, I would work at Netscape after I ended my time as a contractor at Apple, and then I had made a brief stop at SCM Microsystems to do some work with smart cards, which are finally all around us and in our pockets here in the U.S. So that took a long time. But I had done those two things and then landed at Netscape. So I had my domain, started working at Netscape, and on security actually, SSL, and other secure email, other such things. And I would use my business domain, reallycool.com, for some web experiments. It wasn't really my web domain, my business domain yet. I hadn't really started 1099 work and other consulting and such, but that's where we're headed. So I use it for some web experiments, including draggable windows as a homepage sort of format, user experience, for a blog and for other such things, which means a glance through the Wayback Machine is probably somewhat odd, maybe telling if you were to go through all of the various incarnations as I was experimenting and so on. I have linked, as I said in the link section, I have linked to the very first occurrence of my appearance in the Wayback Machine with that domain name. So you can check that out and you can go from there if you like. It was prepared. I just put it up, I didn't really spend any time on it. So I put it up and I used Claris Web Builder or something. Yikes. While I was working at Netscape, I really became fond of hand coding HTML. So I'm not really a fan of visual web editing, HTML editors. I don't know if anybody is really. Even when you use web design tools, you're often building objects and then they convert the objects to HTML. So take it as you will. Now, the semantic web. We're not going to get too far into this, although the semantic web was a thing while I was at Netscape. It was just becoming a thing. RSS feeds in the 0.9, 1.0 and less. I think 1.0 actually was a departure, but RSS version 9 was RDF, something syndication. What is RDF? Let me check that. So RSS version 0.9. Oh, RDF site summary, of course. RSS 2.0 and later from Dave Weiner is really simple syndication. And he went with XML, plain XML, instead of RDF, the resource description framework. That will be interesting as we continue this walk down memory lane, if you will. So yeah, the semantic web it was a thing once upon a time, and then it disappeared, except that it actually did not. Sure, Facebook took over, Twitter took over, LinkedIn took over. These are corporate silos, and each has actually become less open by limiting APIs. I wrote AIs. That's some sort of weird psychological tell. Limiting APIs, moving more data behind their inner walls, so you can't really get to it as easily. I've in other contexts, I've talked about Facebook had the Open Graph, which was interesting. Then they started pulling back on what they actually supported from Open Graph. So their Open Graph standard that they were pushing has been limited more and more over the years in the Facebook implementation of their own protocol. So that's good times. Less and less open. Fully embracing, these companies do, the Cory Doctorow scenario. And you know what it is. He published a book about it recently. It rhymes with impoopification. It was built on the backs and shoulders of their users, and they continue to do that. So I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan. The value of LinkedIn to me is the network itself, not the feed so much, though here in Vegas, LinkedIn is treated as the primary way to share interesting and useful information about the stuff we talk about on this program. That is a problem if you're not connected to the right people, and I am only connected to a few of the right people, so I'm probably missing out on a ton of stuff. The ever more intrusive algorithms on social networking platforms, including, and most definitely including LinkedIn, they're now mostly social media. LinkedIn is essentially Instagram at this point. These platforms have a lot, the algorithms have a lot of control over what we consume, who we are exposed to, and how we discover what's going on. The search of a network on LinkedIn remains the only actually useful thing after decades of what I call decline. I think I say this. I signed up. Yeah, I think I say this later. So I signed up for LinkedIn when they first launched back in 2003. So I've watched the decline directly. I used to live near LinkedIn when I lived in Sunnyvale. Network search on LinkedIn is a little weird because they do enforce their first, second, third degree connections. And if you have no connections, you can't reach out to the person without paying and all this other stuff. And you don't really have a say in that. You may have heard about this new Fediverse idea, which is not really new, but everything old is new again, for better or worse, which is leveraging a protocol developed a decade ago. It was published in 2018, obviously developed before that, leveraging semantic web and open source and open communications to bring back a decentralized network of connection and information sharing. ActivityPub uses activity streams, which uses what we can refer to simply as semantic web ideas. So it uses JSON LD for linking data, linked data, LD, a shared vocabulary, it's extensible, and so on. So the semantic web is a collection of ideas and methodologies. It's not like a hard and fast rule. You don't have to use JSON LD for sharing and moving data around and so on. You can represent you can transport the network graph data in a variety of formats. There's an XML format, there are text formats like TTL and N3, and the list goes on. So the semantic web the shared vocabulary is useful, but they're also extensible. So if you want to add some words to FOF, friend of a friend, you can do that. If you want to create a whole new vocabulary, you can do that too. So there's an extensibility mechanism, and there are a host of ways to make use of the protocols and the sharing. There's an ontology language, OWL, AWL. Is it language? Web ontology language, I think it might be. OWL, of course, because it's WOL would be weird, but OWL, web ontology language. I think it's web ontology. Let's look it up. Since we're here. OWL. Yep, web ontology language. There you go. So it's a W3C standard semantic web language designed to enrich RDF, the resource description framework, data with complex logic, formal semantics, and reasoning capabilities. So resource description framework is a method. OWL is a vocabulary and additional methods, and it goes from there. So the semantic web is fairly open, but sometimes considered too complicated. So RDF site summary, RSS 0.9, probably would have been more interesting in modern times, but Dave Weiner and to some extent, Adam Curry, thank you, the Podfather, the podcasts use RSS 2.0 essentially. And so podcast took off using RSS 2.0 with the enclosure, etc. So here we are. The value of LinkedIn is that network, though, so keep that in mind. So the Fediverse is a big thing, connecting people in a decentralized manner. They use semantic web and open source, as I said. So ActivityPub uses activity streams, again, and using JSON LD and all this stuff. You may think when you're thinking about this, hey, there could be some real opportunity for open, collaborative, and extensible ways to take back the web we really should have had at our disposal. So if you did think that, keep that in mind. So the connection, and I will say my voice probably sounds a little bit scratchy, a little bit. It's slightly better. It was a little bit better earlier in the day today, and more closer to sunrise, I guess. The allergy season in Vegas has sort of commenced. If you're not familiar, there's just stuff in the air. The wind kicks it up. The change in temperature probably changes the air density a little bit. So nuclear testing, atomic testing, dust, wind, who knows what's going on. But every year it gets worse like this. And it was a little bit better, like I said. It was better yesterday, worse today. Anyway, so my apologies. So connection, the idea is to get back to open data, open web, open source, and not lock people into corporate platforms. Now, you may love LinkedIn. You can certainly read about how often or how many people love LinkedIn and post every day reminding people how many followers they've added in the past, whatever, because that's what their career is, managing LinkedIn. The beginnings of awareness of a decentralized or federated web in the form of the Fediverse, for example, it's a great start. And in fact, making federated first platforms, applications, and tools is an interesting direction in general. All sorts of cool and interesting things can come out of this approach when things kind of interoperate together. Remember back in the day when I was like, oh, I have a word processor and a spreadsheet and I can just copy but paste between them. And yeah, remember those days? Think that way. It's not identical, but it's like, oh, I can use the tools the way I want to, not the way I'm told. Whenever you hear something like an announcement, now we let you use these tools in a way that you've been wanting to use them the whole time. So I'm not a fan of that approach. Like, oh, we're going to let people do things. We should have the tools available and you can come up with ways to put the stuff to use. Feel enabled, not restrained. Oh, today we'll let you use these in a little bit more useful way, but we're not going to let you do just anything you want. That's crazy. So it's an interesting direction in general, I think. It's why we're pursuing this stuff at Innovate for Vegas Foundation, but that's entirely different audio program. Today, when people meet in person, perhaps, maybe online, rather than exchanging phone numbers, which still does happen, we see that, and business cards are still out there, paper business cards. I have a bunch. Historically, I have tons for my travels too. That's for better or worse. They often exchange some social media or social network user profile instead of those. If people are meeting and they're like, oh, here's my Insta. Do you have Insta is one. Give me your Insta. It's annoying. Or can I invite you to connect on LinkedIn? Do you use LinkedIn, etc.? Not many people know this, and they did not do a great job at their implementation, and it doesn't look like they're going to fix it. But Insta, and that's a Meta company, which is kind of silly, but it's a company as part of the Meta, whatever, who cares? They did implement some of ActivityPub so that I could follow an Instagram account from my Mastodon account, for example, and vice versa. I think I tried this with my old Instagram account, which I really don't use anymore. So I think somehow I tried this out and it was like, it may have improved. I don't know if they're going to continue supporting it completely or move towards complete support. Who knows? They're laying people off. I know that. So it sort of works. A single seed is planted in that way. Oh, you have an @threads user name that you can, okay. Well, how would people use that? Are they using it? Not sure. A decentralized cross-platform connection capability is there, though, not quite as easy to work with as RSS feeds, for example, which are also still around. And perhaps you found this audio program by way of an RSS feed. And again, by the way, the RSS version 0.9 was based on RDF, Semantic Web Ideas in Action, which is interesting in these modern times. I'll get to that, hang on. But convincing people to try something new, which is ultimately more open, is a tricky proposition already. People don't even like RSS feeds, and they're almost automatic discovery at this point. LinkedIn is what it is because they offer some perceived value, but perhaps at some cost that is not often appreciated or even understood. The internet has sort of landed in that mindset over the years, and you can once again see Cory Doctorow's book for more on that story. It's an interesting book. I checked it out of the library, returned it after I finished it. It's all good. Remember, business cards are still in use, believe it or not. So what if we get back to that mindset? That is, can I share my business card with you? You share yours with me, and each of us can decide what we want to do with these. I don't have to say, oh, I have your business card, but I have to use LinkedIn to make use of it. That's not the case. I can scan it. Paper business cards used to be stored in binders, perhaps. So you could flip through pages of them, or card files, or shoe boxes, or various other creative places. Business card scanners were a thing for a while. They may still be out there. They probably still are. And now we carry a digital business card on our phones sometimes, or other mobile devices. I have a QR code on an e-ink display that I can pin to my shirt, so people can just scan it if they want to. Uh, so now we carry these digitally. Sharing our cards, our information, is often a matter of scanning a QR code on the screen, for example. This works reasonably well, often exchanging the data as a Me card. So a Me card is a shortened version of a V card, which is a standard that sits right next to V calendar. So if you use V calendar data, and you do all the time, if you receive event invites, remember that, or if you've ever noticed the .ics, usually it's like invite.ics. That's an iCalendar stream that Apple developed, and it's a way to send vCalendars between people for invites and so on. So vCards are sort of similar. You can attach a vCard to an email, and your contact information will usually be automatically parsed and added to your contact list. A vCalendar or an ICS attachment will often be automatically added to your calendar, etc. So when I show someone my contact QR code, it doesn't scan a URL that they have to go visit. It gives them my actual contact information directly, and it will add it to their, usually on iPhone and Android devices, it will add my vCard, my Me card, to their contacts. The downside of this is that people won't necessarily remember, where did I meet this person, unless they look at the most recently added connections. But you can actually add a note to your Me card that says met at CES, met at some event, met on. Obviously, you'll have the date from when it was added, but you can add a little note there that will help someone remember, oh, that's right. Here's what we talked about. So it's a convenient way to do things. And the key issue with passing contact information in this way, you don't need a network. You just need a device that can scan and store a QR code. If you've ever been to CES here in Vegas, there are some places within the various show floors and so on, and there are some times perhaps where there are so many people with so many devices, and they make an effort to get around this, and it's not quite as bad as it used to be. But every once in a while, you'll still have a case where you just can't get network or even cell because there are so many people trying to use their cell phones, trying to use Wi-Fi, internet Wi-Fi. So you're stuck, or it just takes forever. So if you can scan an offline QR code and just pick up the contact information, your Me card can contain a URL that points to your LinkedIn profile or whatever. But I can check that later. I have the information. I'm not going to lose it. It's saved in my phone. We're good to go. So ponder that. And there are people still starting companies about online contact capture. I don't understand why that's such a big focus. There was one here in Vegas. It took 40 minutes to finally make a network connection when I was trying it out. I said, you have no offline sharing. This is not worth it to me. You're just recreating the same problem. Anyway, open networks in the future. If you glance through that 2-Bit History article from 2020, you may be intrigued and note at the end of the article, it isn't that long. You can skim through the whole thing. Right at the second to last paragraph, final sentence. In the future, though, again, it's at the end of a paragraph. In the future, though, the web or even the internet could change in fundamental ways that make distributed technology much easier to use. So now I want the data. I don't want to have to deal with the platform. That future is arriving. Maybe it already has arrived, because here is the thing. Open structured data with explicit links, the semantic web, for example, which explicitly connects me to you and you to me and so on. FOF, if you read the article, it kind of runs through that. It aligns perfectly with artificial intelligence of today. And you can find articles if you're really interested on the use of semantic web or semantic data, structured data, to, instead of trying to parse pages that are intended for humans, you parse the actual data that's formatted in JSON LD or XML. Is there an XML LD? I can't remember. It's sort of implied in how XML works, but there's a way to kind of interoperate between JSON LD and XML, and like I said, M3 and TTL, and there's a variety of others. So you can pass data around. They're all pretty much you can do the same things with different types of data. Well, I'll do it with the different, anyway, you if you know, you know. So artificial intelligence, when you're scraping websites, you can either try to parse the data that is a representation of ideas, notions, people, places, and so on for humans. Or you can say, oh, by the way, here's the structured JSON LD data for what a person is, what a place is, how they're connected in a faux object or faux document even. There's a lot of effort going into MCP servers. That's, is it Model Context Protocol? I think it is. MCP servers and agentic access and adapting to human interfaces on web browsers so you can navigate them with an automation tool. Maybe you're doing OpenClaw or some other less problematic tools and methods. We already had this scheme in a usable state 2 decades ago, though, and here we are seeing it become relevant once again. Interesting. It is interesting. So yeah, you can look around at how AI is making use of and is actually better at finding and making connections and so on when they're kind of explicit. The semantic web provides hinting, if you like. Like, have you ever seen something where you're not sure if they're talking about the first person in a sentence or the second person or who's doing what? So this structures it in a way that there's no ambiguity, or far less anyway. So if you do happen to skim the article, and I think you should, it's brief, you will see that there still is some angst over what we now call entity resolution. Fun fact, Jeff Jonas, famously the person that was hired to identify the MIT kids that were doing team card counting and betting and so on, chronicled in the movie 21. So Jeff Jonas, I've talked to him. He's a pretty cool guy. He always answers his email. That's his policy. He started a company after he left Vegas. I don't think he lives here anymore. I don't think he's moved back. Called Senzing, Senzing, and that's what they do, entity resolution. So how can we determine if if I have 2 credit cards, one using my middle name and one using my first name as my name, then what factors can they use to maybe determine, or to at least make a good guess about whether if I'm one person using 2 different, not different identities, but different account information, right? What's your name? Maybe I have a post office box instead of a mailing address, or whatever the rules are of a particular account and so on. So how can I attach a single entity to multiple accounts or multiple references, etc.? So he does the whole company about that. It's as simple as asking, is a person named Dan Hugo with an email address of dhugo@best.com? Remember my introductory mentions. So is Dan Hugo with dhugo@best.com the same person as one named Dan Hugo with an email address of dhugo@netcom.com? In reality, yes, in this case, they would be the same person, but this has been an ongoing discussion in general. What is the exact meaning in relationships and connections so that there's absolute clarity? So is this the same person? We should be able to be clear about that, etc. But something left out of that particular facet of the conversation, maybe Dan Hugo wants to use 2 different email addresses or more, or more than 2 addresses, or more, because sometimes the engagement context is about a particular work or business focus. So I'd like to use a business email address. Other times it might be a personal engagement, a person I'm speaking with, and I want to give them my contact. So here's my home email address, if you like, and so on. Later, I may say, oh, I have 2 email addresses, and it's up to you to choose which one you use if I give you both. But if I'm in a work context and I say, yeah, here's my, dhugo@reallycool.com, okay. And then later I'll say, oh yeah, here's my personal email address. I could have more than one personal email address, but I may want to separate business me and person me. So it's sort of a problem that doesn't really need to be overthought. So it's something to think about, but not too much, in how we use our contact. Like some people have multiple LinkedIn accounts because they have one for their political, maybe you have a city council person or a mayor or something. And so they have their presence in the context of their civic work. And then there's their personal, or maybe they have a business and they don't want to commingle them. So leaving that to the person to decide is the way to do it, not to enforce too many rules, right? So a minimally viable collection of constraints, vocabulary, methods, but don't say, oh, you're going to have to connect all of your email addresses, because we don't want people to think there's more than one aspect of you in the world. So that's my take. So if we have, did I finish that? Oh, so we'll save the deeper dive for another time. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. The corner cases are always going to lead to debate, but they shouldn't lead to things just stopping and never advancing. So, and I will point out now, because we're coming to the end, I'll point out now that Project ACT, one of our initiatives at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation, is the autonomous cohort tessellation, is intended to connect civic volunteers, civic tech organizations. In the absence of Code for America, they kind of pulled the rug and took off. So all these organizations are now like, you can search in Google or you can try to find something on LinkedIn. How do I discover other similar types of organizations elsewhere who might be working on things similar to what I'm trying to work on? So the whole notion is it's super difficult to make those connections without a central authority, or you can empower the different cohorts, the autonomous cohorts, who are no longer a part of a Code for America, or maybe they're trying to be a part of the, what is it called? The Alliance of Civic Technologists also, and unfortunately ACT, but we're Project ACT. So maybe you work with them, but they have, 18 different cohorts participating. Hopefully there are more cohorts than that. And you don't have to limit yourself to what an organization wants to manage and deal with. Anybody from anywhere could be, could quote unquote join by creating one network connection to one other organization. And then through modern day crawling, you find their little files, the FOF, for example, friend of a friend. And you say, oh, okay, you know these people and you know these people from these organizations. And okay, so we'll make this big network graph. And then you can start discovering what other people are working on and so on. So that's sort of the base of where some of this is coming from, is like, oh, we can use this for other things as well. Our Innovate for Nevada connection initiative, and sort of what I'm talking about here is a commercial or a more commercial implementation, something that could be monetized. So if we have a growing number of federated network, if we have a growing federated network of interoperable services already available broadly and at scale, which we do, if we have an established way to share personal contact information in a way that fits cleanly into this federation scheme, we do, and which we can use with our broadly deployed mobile devices and the general internets at large, we do, why are we so eager to stick with corporate silos that are taking more and giving less in some case? Taking more than giving in some cases, as I wrote. Maybe we aren't. Maybe we aren't so interested in sticking with them, except of what else is there, right? So that is where my newest idea fits into the mix of ideas that I've already talked about and I'm pursuing. Not enough time in the day, not enough brain cells in the noggin. But in a more general sense, how it fits into the scheme I'm pursuing in a more general sense of connecting things across domains, if you will, using these now open protocols and methods and so on, and this is why we happen to be focused on these sorts of standards over at the Innovate for Vegas Foundation as well. So Project ACT and heavy use of ActivityPub and open standards for information sharing and publication and subscription and so on. Personally, I'm fond of re-exploring RSS 0.9 and seeing what it needs to be brought up to modern usability. Probably not much, because it was probably extensible enough already. And where better to try out ideas like this than in a place with a population of around 2.3 million people, Clark County, and a visitor population of nearly 40 million people annually. Sometimes a little bit more, maybe sometimes a little bit less. And so that's the beginnings of talking about this idea. I don't want to talk about it too much, because then if it doesn't happen, you'll say, another one. But if you think about it, this notion of maintaining connections, it's like it's initially a simplified version of any sort of, like if you had your Twitter contacts, if you're a Twitter person, or if you could export your Facebook contact. I don't want all of my data. I just want to export my friends list or my follow list from Twitter or my network from LinkedIn. Just give me the contacts. And LinkedIn used to support contact syncing. I don't know if it still works. I know they stopped sharing email addresses or something. They keep those for themselves. But at the end of the day, if I could just say, hey, I don't want to follow you and your posts and I just want to share our business card information. we can use a similar set of ideas, and then we can enable tools and methods that say, oh, okay, now I want to find this person's LinkedIn address, or I want to try to get their current email address. I want to get an update, because if they're no longer working where they were, I'd like to see where they are now. So I want to make sure this is an up-to-date version of their contact information, and build on it from there. Like, the best ideas are sometimes from people that are not in the conversation. So they'll be somewhere else and say, well, why don't you enable something like this? And the answer is, well, you can too, or we can work together. So that's the general idea. But I would very much like to get away from LinkedIn. It's going to be hard to quit cold turkey, but I very rarely post anything personal there. Basically never, except unless I'm resharing something. I maintain network connections. I have found most people in Vegas prefer the ghosting response over actual, responding to a direct message. I really don't like LinkedIn DMs, because LinkedIn is a chaperone between me and the person I'm trying to communicate with. So I often will say, well, I prefer email if possible. And they ignore that too. So getting the platform out of the way, connecting with people more directly, and then maintaining connections and actually communicating, well, that's something we can't really solve with software. But maybe if we take more ownership of our connections, we'll start to remember that we can also take ownership of maintaining those connections as though they were actually humans. Although in the modern era, they don't need to be. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. To be continued. I'm actually I'm interested in everything I'm working on, unfortunately. So I really got to knock off this sleeping. And if I can come up with a real solution to my always in effect, but now a little bit even more allergies in the greater Vegas area, then I will be off to the races and speaking clearly about that journey. That's all I got for you today, but thank you for listening. Don't forget the Initiative 2026. I really got to get the word out more and better. I've mentioned it on LinkedIn, and I've just gone over how that doesn't really matter anymore. You got to have like 10,000 followers before anybody pays attention to anything. Why? Because the algorithm. Our Innovate for Vegas page has 950 followers, I think it is. And if you look at the analytics for exposure, I think, like how many times a particular post on that page has been viewed, it'll be like 10, 20. So the algorithm is not delivering it to everybody, all 950-ish people that are following. It's saying, oh, you only have 950 followers, so we're only going to show it to 20 of those people. Great. So LinkedIn should not be making that decision for us, or you, for that matter. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you for listening. As always, don't forget to check out my buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo page for links to all the stuff I'm working on. You don't need to spend any money there. You can if you want, but it's freely visible and available for your viewing pleasure. Eventually, all that information will be published with FOF or something similar. I should just do that. I don't know why I've not created my own FOF. It's easy to do. You can hand build it easily. There are tools to create them. Same. That's it. Happy Friday. The summer is upon us. Enjoy. Stay hydrated. Bye-bye.